Welcome to the Awaken Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm Angela Wilkinson, attraction coach and founder of The Goddess Next Door. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the awakened goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Hey, I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. Stephanie Banks is a spiritual teacher, healer, and channeler of universal wisdom. Stephanie is the author of A Soulful Awakening, which manifested after a near-death experience she had in 2012. Stephanie's mission is to help those that are ready to shift themselves to a heightened state of awareness of who we are and why we are here. Stephanie offers personal messages from their guides and teachers to aid and assist in their healing and transformation. Today, she and I talk about how to ask and receive guidance from the non-physical realm and how to use every situation as an opportunity for growth. But before I talk with Stephanie, do you desire a deeper understanding of your spirituality? How about the metaphysical world? And what about the laws of the universe? In the Spark Spiritual Academy, we explore metaphysical and lifestyle topics where we give you the keys in easy-to-use, bite-sized pieces to create the life you want. Spark Spiritual Academy offers a monthly collection of inspiring, thought-provoking information in one convenient place. Each month, you'll get a new collection of bonus material from the Awakened Goddess Show experts. You'll also get journal exercises, meditations, and resources to put into practice and create quantum leaps forward in your life. Join us today and ignite your brilliance within. See you there! Welcome, Stephanie, to the Awakened Goddess Show. I am super excited to have you joining me today to talk about awakening to your higher self. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so you have a book out, A Soulful Awakening. So why don't you share what that is about?
Sure. Well, the book just came out in October, and it was a couple years in process. And essentially, it's a guidebook, an energetic guidebook to people who are looking for a way to transform their lives and awaken to their higher self. So in short, to reconnect with their higher being, to reconnect with source, to reconnect with one another, to discover who they are and what they're about, why they're here, all of these fundamental questions that we ponder from time to time. And I chose to write the book in such a way that people would find it easy, almost like Spirituality 101. So what I did is I took a few of my own life stories that people have found interesting and I found challenging at the time. And I wrote about those circumstances of my life. And then I took some channeled messages that I received after a near-death experience that I had in 2012. And I applied those messages to the various stories that I chose to write about in hopes that while I was writing it, I would be able to look at those situations differently from a new perspective and then actually be able to learn and grow from them. And through that process, that's what I was able to do. And now what I'm finding from people who are reading the book is that they're able to insert their own life stories that are similar and also find a way to learn and grow from their own experiences. So the book was basically, I felt like it just came out of me very effortlessly and easily, and I'm just so grateful to be able to share it with the world.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you packed it full of amazing practical information that touches on those points that we all have questions about in our life. So what I understand is that you had a really horrific mountain bike accident that kind of was the catalyst to a lot of the stuff that you talk about. So can you share what happened and talk about your awakening?
Sure. Essentially what happened was I was just getting back into mountain biking. I had taken about a 10-year hiatus from the sport, and my family, my son and my husband and I decided to take a trip into the mountains, into Whistler, British Columbia. It's a fairly well-known ski resort in the wintertime, and in the summer they offer mountain biking. So it's big mountains, fairly unforgiving territory, and we had done a run that we all liked, and my boys wanted to do a jump that was partway down one of these runs that we were on. And so the idea was we'd come back down the same run. When we got to the jump section, I would bypass the jumps. I'm not a jumper. I like to have my feet planted on the ground,
Sure.
my tires included.
Yeah.
And I would meet them at the bottom and be able to take some pictures of them. So as I headed towards the trail that bypassed the jumps, partway down, I just felt this uncontrollable urge to, I don't know, to go into this jump section, and thinking that I would just roll over one of these jumps as opposed to actually jump it. I thought it would be this nice mounded hill that I could just roll up and over and carry on my way. But what I failed to realize, because I just made an assumption, I didn't look at my situation closely and carefully, which is a lesson in and of itself. If I had looked, I would have seen that there was about an 8-foot gap between the takeoff and the transition, with a gully, a rock crevice below. So by the time I realized this, it was too late to stop, and I didn't have enough momentum to actually carry me over the jump. So I ended up catapulting through the air and colliding with a rock wall on the other side before falling into the gully below, with my bike landing on top of me. So it was a fairly significant accident. I had numerous injuries. I left the hospital with a cast on both arms, both my left arm and my right arm, and pretty major whiplash, and my pedal had inserted itself into my shin, and my femur was significantly bruised, and all the, lovely things that go along with smashing into a rock wall. If anyone's ever done that, you would know. And when I was in the casting room of the clinic, I realized that the doctor was about to put a cast on both of my arms, and I went into a panic mode of, how does one remain independent in such a situation? And I begged and I pleaded with them to pick the worst hand, cast it, and then the hand that had the least damage, I asked him if he could cast it, cut it open, tie it with a tensor so that I could remove it easily if I went into a state of resistance and start feeling claustrophobic. So he was nice enough to do that. Luckily, I'm a pretty forceful person sometimes, and he appeased me, and I took the cast off basically before I got home. And that was my saving grace, because when I went into my recovery mode, I didn't know what to do with myself. I found myself going into this really dark place of, what was I thinking? What have I done? I have a company that, I run. It's a landscape company, so it's hands-on. I have 27 employees and a small farm and a mother, and all these thoughts were going through my head, and I felt myself really slipping in the wrong direction. So I made a decision that I needed to exert that energy in a more positive manner in hopes of actually being able to recover. So I decided that I would write. It's something that I've always liked to do. I hadn't done it in numerous years. So I pulled out an old journal and I sat on my deck, and I remember sitting there thinking, well, what am I going to write about? And that's something that writers often deal with. What am I going to write about? And as I was contemplating, I realized that I had actually already been writing, and I saw my mother's name written at the bottom of a page as if it was a letter. And my mother died in 1996, so you can imagine my state of shock that, what have I been writing? So I went back and I read this letter that came out through my hand, but it was in her penmanship. And she talked about how my heart had been blocked and now it was open, and that I now had this very open connection to the other side if I chose to dive in and explore that avenue. She talked about how we were in the heat of powerful times on the planet as a collective consciousness, how we're going through a time of change, of spiritual evolution, and all sorts of concepts that I had never heard or pondered before. So that was day 2 of my recovery. And from there, I woke up every day with just this renewed sense of self and a passion and excitement about who am I going to hear from today? And I just started channeling every day, sometimes multiple times throughout the day, and began to receive just amazing, insightful, knowledgeable messages from our guides and teachers on the other side. And it was just such an amazing experience. And that was basically, in that process of channeling, it came to my awareness through one of my guides that when I had actually smashed into that rock wall and lay in the gully, my heart had stopped momentarily. And in those moments, I had left my body and traveled with my guide and numerous other guides who were there to meet me. And I was shown my life in its complete form. So meaning I saw my physical form here on earth, and I saw my eternal life as it is in the non-physical realm. And in those moments, I made a conscious choice to come back to my body, reinstate with my physical self, with a renewed awareness of life, what it's about, why we're here, where we're going, what I'm passionate about, and with a real mission to just share all those concepts.
Wow, what a powerful experience. I mean, to make that decision to come back. So though in the moment you didn't remember that. It was later that you remembered that your heart stopped. Is that right?
It all came through the channeled messages, and I still don't have any real remembrance of the experience. What I do know is that I've changed tremendously. I'm not the same person I was prior to August 18th, 2012. I've completely changed. And because I got this message, I ended up feeling almost a little bit ripped off. I didn't remember. And I wanted more information. So I tracked down a friend of mine who is very well regarded in his work as an energy healer and a hypnotherapist. And he's a mentor to me, and I really trust and value his opinion. So I asked him if I could come over to his office and bring some of these messages, share them with him, and then see where that went. And in that evening, after sharing the messages, he asked if I'd be interested in seeing if I could channel this guide in particular and see if he had anything to say through my body. And I had never done anything like that before, so I was pretty curious, and I agreed. And in that verbal channeling, it was brought to my attention again about the near-death experience and what happened, and that it was actually my choice for this to happen. It was a decision that I made when I was planning out this lifetime, that if I hadn't awoken by a certain period, then I would need something a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger to reawaken me to my higher self. So I have had the 2 experiences, and then everything made sense. Before then, I felt kind of jumbled, as if there was a missing link. And then once I received those messages, it all came together.
Wow. What an amazing unfolding that was.
It was pretty powerful.
Yeah. And I imagine that since you were like this new person, it was kind of like I don't even know what words I want to put to it, but like the veil was lifted and you could see clearly.
That's exactly how it felt. And until that actually happens, it's a difficult thing to articulate and to sort through in your own mind and in your own body what's going on. So at first I was very confused about it all. And I've heard this from other people that are awakening in their own time frame and through their own means, is that there's this time of transition where it is confusing, because we're so used to living sort of this linear lifestyle where we get up, we go to work, we have our coffee, we finish work, we pick up our kids or our dogs or whatever, and we go to the grocery store, buy some food, go home, eat, and do it all over again. and we sort of get into this habitual pattern. And then all of a sudden, when something changes so quickly, as humans, we're quite resistant to that kind of change, and experiencing something completely outside the box from what we're used to can create some inner turmoil, and it really forces you to do a lot of inner work. And or not. That was a choice. I had a choice. I could shut that journal and decide never to write again and think, well, I'm not, I don't want to go there. But it was just such a beautiful, magical experience. And something had shifted, and when something shifts inside you, and when you feel so compelled to do something, it becomes an overwhelming urge, and it's really hard to ignore that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting as I am just being with what you're saying about your awakening. Recently I had carpal tunnel surgery, and they put me completely under, and it was the weirdest thing, because when I was like the next couple days, I felt like something happened on the table, but of course no one tells you. And because it feels like my tastes changed in like what I wanted to eat. For the first week I couldn't talk, and so now it just is like another affirmation or confirmation that I'm wondering if something really did happen. Who knows? But yeah, it's just curious.
You'll probably sort through that and figure that out, and you hear about that quite frequently. And this is something that I'm discovering now, especially doing these radio shows and sort of coming out public about my own story, is that there are more people than not that have had similar experiences where they've either had an accident, or they've had surgery, or they've been ill for a while, or a short period of time, or they lose somebody close to them, and they feel the same way, that something has changed, and to know that it is so completely possible in every moment of every day, we can change completely, and we do change completely. It's just a matter of aligning our perception to that change to be able to see exactly what the change has created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, rather than going back to the old way of being, the old patterns and the old habits. And,
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's easy to fall back into that because we're so habituated. Yeah. So
it is. We have a routine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious, when we were channeling all the messages from the different guides, did you ever kind of question where the messages were coming from, or kind of get like just kind of doubt or anything, or?
Absolutely. For sure. I mean, I'm definitely an open-minded person. I always have been, and I knew that people channeled. I've been to a channeler or two in my lifetime, and I grew up with parents who were very intuitive and encouraged that in myself and in my brother. So I was definitely a believer, but it was never me. It was always somebody else. So when I started channeling these messages, at first I was in awe. It was a state of confusion, because I was really excited and happy and grateful and thankful. But then there was this other side of me, my mind side, that was saying, maybe you just hit your head a little bit too hard.
Yeah.
Like,
just shake it off.
So I really didn't share the messages with anybody at first, other than my husband and my son. And then after, I don't know, maybe it was 3 or 4 months, I decided to call a close friend of mine in Ontario who is a very wise woman. She works in the social work department at a university in Ontario, and she also has a mindfulness center. So she has the clinical background combined with this alternative side to her. And I thought, and she's known me since I was 14. So I thought, what a better person to ask. So I called her and I explained to her what had been happening and about these messages. And she said, well, dear, why don't you just read me some? So I did. I sat down for about half an hour and I read her some messages. And prior to starting that reading, she's also an actress. She has a background as an actress. And she said to me, oftentimes actors and musicians and artists, they'll feel that when they're expressing their art, they're actually drawing from a higher source or their higher self. And chances are this is just, you tapping into your higher self. And, but let's just see, let's read some of them together, and I'll let you know what I think. So I finished my, half hour, 45 minutes of reading to her, and there was silence on the other end, and I was like almost a bit nervous about what she was going to say. And then her remark was, I don't think that that's you. That doesn't sound anything like you. And it really doesn't. And that's the thing, is that these messages they don't sound like me. And every message from each guide changes in its penmanship. So some of them will have the most beautiful cursive writing. Others will be kind of messy printing, for example. My grandfather's, I received a message from my grandfather who died in 1987, and his message is in his handwriting. And my brother was, I wasn't too certain how he was going to feel about all of this, and he's very scientific, and I was, always wondering, how am I going to bring this up with him? And then I received this message from my grandfather, and I took it down to his place, showed it to him, and first thing I said was, whose handwriting is this? And his response was, well, it's Grandpa's. Where did you get that from? And, it's those little confirmations that were so big in my mind. And there was many, I kept looking for confirmation, and now I'm at the point where I don't need it anymore. Mm-hmm. But of course I did at the beginning, because it's new and it's different. And I wanted to be able to have, I needed more confidence in what I was doing. And at some point, you just have to trust in it. Yeah. And like I say in the beginning of the book, it doesn't really matter, honestly, what your belief is. If you believe in the non-physical realm or not, what matters is that you're open-minded enough to read the messages and see if they resonate with you and if they create a change that you're perhaps looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you find that most people have a resistance to the idea of the non-physical and channeling? Or do you find that?
I don't, actually. And I thought I would. I thought that would be, I was actually kind of concerned about coming out of the closet, quote unquote, mm-hmm. Especially in my hometown. Like I said, I run a fairly substantial company here, and I'm known as, the girl with the Carhartts and the pruning saw on one hip and pruners in the other hand. And I was actually kind of concerned about all of a sudden having a book in the coffee shops around town with, this story about me traveling with my angels and my guides. And the response that I've received has been such an eye-opener for me, that more and more and more people are open to these ideas. And I think in BC in particular, this is all I can really relate to, because this is where I live. We're very open to these ideas and concepts, and I think that's just a sign of the times and where we're going collectively.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great to hear that your experience of sharing that and coming out of the closet was a positive one. So when you do your channeling, do you seek out to communicate with a particular guide, or do they just kind of let you know when they have something to say and you need to listen, or how does that work?
It's kind of a combination of both. So oftentimes I will actually sit down and request a message from someone in particular. And now that I'm getting to know them all, I kind of go to different guides for different purposes. And then there's times when I'll receive a request through my website, or, however that may come from an individual who's looking for a message from one of their guides, or perhaps a past loved one. And in which case, I don't have any expectations about who or where that's going to come from. I just simply ask the universe if there's somebody that has anything to say, and if so, would they mind sharing? Mm-hmm. So it's always a surprise where the message is coming from. Mm-hmm. But I have been known to stop on the side of the road and channel a message because it's because it's just so strong. Or actually, I channeled. Turned out to be a poem in the Starbucks parking lot at one point, and ended up winning an award for that. And it took me all of 3 minutes to write it, because it just flowed out so quickly.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So let's talk about the chapter that you wrote, The Magic of Synchronicities. your story of your mom and your dad reuniting after decades.
Sure. Well, I chose that story for a couple different reasons, but I guess the primary reason why I picked it was because it is such a shining example of how life comes around in full circle, and we can't always escape the things that we maybe would like to escape, and that there's a big importance around unveiling our own emotions and dealing with things as opposed to just sweeping them under the carpet and thinking that they're going to go away. And in this particular situation between my mom and my dad was diagnosed with MS when I was quite young, and consequently he decided that it would be in the best interest of his family if he was to remove himself from that life. And he moved to Mexico, and I never knew him. I didn't have any contact with him growing up. I was 2 at the time when he left, and my mother was heartbroken. They were high school sweethearts, and they went to separate universities, got married, moved to Calgary, Alberta, and started a family, and life was pretty good until he was diagnosed with this horrible disease. So there was no real lead up to the breakup, and so she carried that with her entire life. And she was a happy lady, but there was always this piece of her that seemed like it had dissolved and was missing. And in my opinion, it was always there was no finality to that situation. My dad just left, and she went her own way, and there was no discussion about it. And so when I was 24 years old, she was diagnosed with lymphoma, and I moved back she was back in Ontario at the time, in my hometown of Stratford, and I moved back to take care of her. And she, at that point, was on the waiting list for 2 different hospitals, and one of them was in Hamilton, Ontario. The other one was in London. And it was just one of those things, whenever a bed came up, that's where she would end up. So she ended up in Hamilton, so they moved her there. And I went to visit her. It was, I think, within the first week that she was there, and one of her best friends was there visiting, and I overheard them talking about my dad, Steve, and wondered where he was and if anyone had ever heard from him. And I called her my aunt. My mom's best friend mentioned that she had been at a luncheon in Toronto and had heard through the grapevine that he had actually been moved back from Mexico to Hamilton, and that he was residing in the same city. Neither one of them, my mom nor Steve, having any connection to that city. And that was the start of them being able to reach out to one another after 24 years or 22 years, something like that. And for me to be able to also meet my father, I did meet him a couple of times. And where my mom's hospital was situated was right below the nursing home. He wasn't old enough to be in a nursing home, but he needed the care. He was looking down on her hospital, so they could literally see each other's buildings. And they started talking on the phone, and they reconciled just months before my mom actually passed away. So it was just, to me, a really nice ending to a story, that she could have passed away having her own regrets and resentment towards my dad. And for me, I was able to let all of it go and be okay with it.
That's a beautiful story. And I think that, the magic of synchronicities and how things kind of come together like that. I mean, that's not anything that we as humans, physical beings, can bring together. And it's just, I love hearing those kinds of stories. Are there other stories about synchronicities in your own life that you want to share?
Well, the funny thing is since my accident, and I've become more in tune with myself, and after it's one thing to write these messages, it's another thing to actually read them and reread them and start implementing them into my own life. And that's the thing, that it takes some diligence, and it takes some want and some need on our own behalf to actually make that we can, through adopting the lessons that we're being taught. So as I've done that, what I've noticed is that synchronicities are happening all the time. And I think through my own exploration, they were always happening. I just wasn't noticing them because I wasn't in alignment with myself. So, in other words, once we get to know who we are and we start thinking about our own belief systems and reevaluating our belief systems and doing the things that we love, the things that we're passionate about, the things that bring us joy and happiness on a regular basis, living through love and compassion, removing judgment, hate, anger, fear, manipulation, and control, then that's where we become in tune with our higher self and in turn more in alignment with our source. And when that happens, that's when you start noticing life unfold magically. And for me, that's what's happened. The right person will show up at the right time. I'll see a billboard that is completely in alignment with what I'm thinking about at that particular moment. A workshop will pop up in my view that I really need to go to, or whatever the case may be. And then when those synchronicities start to present themselves, that's where manifestation starts to take place. Mm-hmm. So they sort of work in conjunction with one another, because the signs, the synchronicities will lead you to your manifestations. And for me, I've had some amazing manifestations without even trying. It's just happening. So there's really something to be said about keeping things simple, align with who you are, know yourself, be true to yourself, trust in the universe, come from a place of love as opposed to fear, do the things that make you happy, and then everything literally just starts to fall into place. But it takes some work to get there, because we have so much history and so many things that we've adopted and ideas that we've placed upon ourselves that other people at some point, even well-intentioned people, have placed on us, but we've taken those on as if they really are us, and maybe they're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious, are there any stories of manifestation or synchronicity that stands out for you?
Yeah, well, I have one that I think is just an amazing story of manifestation, and I think for me it was I've got two. Okay, which one should I pick? I'll pick this one because it's easier. Maybe I'll write about the other one on a blog one day about Hay House conference that I went to. But yeah. The other one is just a very simple one, but yet complex, because I still haven't really been able to figure out how it all works. But what happened was I was going on a trip. I had a really good camera with all the gear, and I started to organize myself, and I realized that at some point I had lost the battery charger, and it made me upset and angry that I would be so careless. So I decided I'm going to inventory all my gear, and I'm going to write it all down. I'm going to take it all out, put it all back, and have a complete inventory. And when I had bought this particular camera, I was upset because there wasn't an actual English manual, and it's a professional camera. So how do you learn how to use a camera if you don't have a manual? And the lady was nice enough to have downloaded a digital copy. And as you and I talked about in the pre-show, I'm not a digital person. Mm-hmm. And that to me was just like reading Japanese, reading something on the screen. And to the point where I actually took a trip to another city to have a lesson with my camera with somebody who knew how to work it. And this is just leading up to the fact that I did not have this English manual. So now here I am, quite a few months later, preparing for this trip, and I'm doing an inventory of all my gear. And I really only have a few things, like literally maybe eight things to inventory, but that's what I'm doing. And I have them all written down, and I have everything put back into either the original box or my case. And all I had to do was take my little list and put it in the box, close the lid, and throw out a couple pieces of scrap paper and a paper clip, and then I was done. Mm-hmm. So as I went to put the list in the box, I realized that there was what looked to be like a manual sitting on my table. So I pick it up and I look at it, and I'm thinking, well, what can this be for? It's got to be the French one. And I flip through it. I'm like, no, it's not French. So I open up the box, and the French manual was in there. And so I pick it up again, and I read the front, read the back, read it all the way through. And sure enough, it was the English manual to the camera that I'd never had. So a few months later, I went to Pasadena, and I went to see a channeler who I've been following for quite a while. And I asked him about that, like, how is it possible I know that manual wasn't there. I confirmed it with my son and my husband, and I already knew, but we start doubting, right?
Right.
And I was told that that we can shift from one reality to another in every moment, and that was something I needed. I shifted to that reality, and there was my manual, and that's how manifestation happens. It can happen just like that. When you look too hard for something, you're placing an expectation on that thing that you need it, you have to have it, there's no way you can live without it, and you'll do anything you can to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do that, even just saying those words creates resistance.
Yes.
Because you're resisting the bigger picture, and the bigger picture could have something bigger and better planned for you. So the way I try to approach life, and the manual example is a good one, because I didn't have any expectations, zero, that I would have a manual show up. Had I sat there and meditated on it for 3 hours, I probably still would be without a manual.
Yeah.
But somewhere within me, I was okay with not having it. But I also felt like I really wanted it. Mm-hmm. And I felt that way when I was packing up all my stuff. I felt that little cringe in me that I didn't have it. So when it comes to manifestation, I think it's really a matter of envisioning, not just envisioning, but feeling yourself in that situation. What would it feel like to have this, or to be here in this place, and to allow yourself to go there in your mind's eye, and then let go of the need or the insistence for it to actually happen. Mm-hmm. Because going back to one of my teachers, and it's a really good a visual for me. I'm a visual person, so I like to be able to see everything in my mind. How it was explained to me is like your higher self is up here on the mountaintop, seeing everything. Your mind is down here in the valley, and it's obstructed by these mountains, so it's only seeing what's right in front of you. If you deny your higher self to lead you in the right direction by simply following your mind and what it can see, you're denying yourself of all the potentials that lie before you.
Yeah, we just get in our own way. It's just crazy how we do that.
It is. And I have, one line that I say to myself over and over is insistence creates resistance. And being a landscaper, we work a lot with water and the flow of water. So I use that as an analogy for myself and people that I work with, that if, it doesn't matter how hard you try to push water through a pipe, if it's blocked, it's not going to flow. Yeah. You have to remove those blockages and those insistences and allow the water to flow. And it's the same with our energy and our being and our state of mind and our actions. And if we just allow things to happen and really be okay with how they roll out, and look at every situation as an opportunity for growth as opposed to a blockage or a hindrance or a limitation of some kind, then we start to really open up ourselves to our higher self and our greater potential.
Like you say, being so focused on the outcome and what it has to look like seems to really limit what the universe is able to bring to us. Because if we're hyper-focused on, it's got to look this way, it's got to come in this form, then it's like putting a kink in the hose.
Exactly. And I think because we're such linear beings, we're just coming into our own, we're just starting to explore the multidimensional way of the universe. And, but right now we're so three-dimensional and we like things concrete, and we've also become really accustomed to, being independent and wanting to do things ourselves in one particular way with one particular outcome, and we don't need help from anybody else because that means that we're not strong and we're not capable. And really when we realize that we're all connected and we're all one and we're all working together, and everybody else has different ideas and different thought patterns and ways of doing things, and if we're open to that, then our life becomes so much more expanded, and it's easier to let go of that one outcome that we're we think we need or think would be the most beneficial to us. And it's really about drawing from everybody else's experiences and letting go of the idea that we need to do it all ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, just your thoughts on this, because one of the things that most people are wanting to manifest more of is money. And a lot of people, you talk about money, and money is just an energy, and they say it's not really about the money, right? So I'm just curious what your thoughts are, in this conversation about manifesting money and letting go of the outcome, and how, what are your feelings on that?
Well, my first feeling is that if I had a really solid answer to that, that would mean that I would have lots of money.
Oh, so you're looking too?
So I'm still working on this one myself. But I really do, I do believe one of the things that's holding me back and holds a lot of people back is that associated with that feeling of wanting more money comes a feeling of guilt that we're asking for it. And especially when you're dealing with people that are in certain professions, so people that are in service professions, we feel that if we're serving people, we shouldn't be requiring money to go with it, that we're doing an act of compassion and kindness, and with that, money shouldn't come into the equation. And somebody that I really admire and like to listen to is Robin Sharma, because he seems to have a really good grasp of incorporating those two things and allowing yourself to bring money to you and to be okay with that. And that money, it's like everything. There's an abundance of all of it. There really is. It's just a matter of tapping into it and being okay with the person down the street having lots of it, as opposed to feeling jealous about them and thinking, oh, that person has this person has that means I'm not going to get any. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. There's
plenty of it for all of us. We just have to be okay with allowing it to flow in our direction and not associating money as being a bad thing to ask for. And I think, and this is something I'm trying to teach my 12-year-old, because obviously I wasn't taught this as a kid, which is why I still struggle with this. But, I hear him talking about when he grows up, he wants to have a job where he makes lots of money. And that's the sign of the society that we live in.
Sure.
What I'm trying to teach him is find the thing that brings you joy, do the things that you're passionate about, and come from a place of respect and compassion for the people around you while you do those things, and the money will just flow to you. Mm-hmm. So that's really all I can offer right now in terms of manifesting money.
Yeah.
And if anyone comes up with anything better, please email me.
Yeah. I know, because the story of manifesting and shifting into another reality where the manual shows up, it's like, yeah, okay, let's shift over to where we win the lottery, or there's just dollars that show up on the floor. Yeah. That'd be great.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing. There's certain things that are just so easy to say, and they're not as easy to implement. And that's one of the things that I've found through the book, A Soulful Awakening, is that the messages are high vibrational. Mm-hmm. And when people read them, there's something in them that creates that shift and creates that change almost instantly in many, many, many people. And I just did a workshop yesterday, and a lady came up to me at the beginning, and she said there was 3 words. She said, I love the book, but there was 3 words. And in those 3 words, I just felt it. I felt it shift. And that can happen. We can shift instantly. It's just a matter of hitting that sweet spot and hearing something in the right way at the right time for the right reason. And then we can actually get ourselves into a new reality. And something you just said reminded me of a time when I was at a hockey game with my mom, and I was starting to experiment with all this stuff. It was just after my accident, and we bought 2 50-50 tickets. And I said to her, okay, let's just experiment here. We'll pick one, and we'll focus on it for the entire game until they make the draw. Mm-hmm. So I picked the one with the easiest numbers to remember. and I started memorizing them, and so did my mom. And then I would pull it out every now and then, look at it, focus on it. She would do the same. And we did this for 2.5 periods. And at some point, I don't know exactly when it was, as I pulled it out and I was looking at this ticket, I had this moment of this thought that went through my head that said, this is dumb. What are you doing? Yeah. This isn't going to work. And as quickly as I thought it, I thought, I shouldn't have thought that. That was a moment of doubt. Mm-hmm. So then they drew the numbers, and I was one number off by one number.
Oh, dear.
And as soon as I drew the numbers, I knew. I said, you know what? That was the lesson. That one moment of doubt. And that's where we trip ourselves up. We have doubt in ourselves. We have doubt in our abilities. We doubt that we can actually heal ourselves from a physical ailment when we actually can. We doubt that we can get the job that we're seeking. We doubt we can manifest the money that we need. We doubt that we're good parents or spouses and friends and the whole 9 yards. And the starting point, I think, is to start with yourself. Reevaluate yourself. Love yourself. Find something in you to love about yourself. And if you have trouble doing that, turn to the people that love you and ask them, what is it that you love about me? Remind me, because I need a reminder right now. And start focusing on those things. And if you have trouble, write them down and read them. Yeah. And then you'll get to a place where you can actually verbalize them and start saying them to yourself. And so when you start having these thought patterns of worry and regret and all the rest of it, you can start replacing those thoughts with something more proactive and positive. And once you start loving yourself, then you'll be truly able to start loving the world around you, and then you'll start experiencing significant change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm wondering if you can talk about this idea that service to others is going to be the new fundamental principle of service to the self.
Right. Well, I think, the message there is that we are all connected. Like I said earlier, we all have originated from the same source. We live through the same source. We return to the same source. We can't avoid one another. Mm-hmm. And when we do little acts of kindness, these little moments of service, whether it's something big and grand or whether it's something small and simple, what we're doing is we're contributing to the overall well-being of the global community. And not only are we contributing to each other, we're contributing to our own well-being, because when we do those things, we actually release serotonin in our own brain and we create that happy feeling. And I'm sure we've all been there. And if anyone's listening and hasn't been there, try it. Give a dollar to the guy on the street corner, or help the lady in the grocery store with their bags, or open the door for somebody as they're walking through it, or go and take a trip somewhere in the world and do something that's servicing other people. And you'll feel and experience a change within yourself and know that you are contributing to the change on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that what I understand too is research has shown that when you do an act of kindness, and if there's anyone observing, just the act of observing, they also will get that boost of like the feel-good hormones and all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What a great thing to be addicted to. I mean, I have a 12-year-old, and 12-year-olds in this society can be quite challenging. They have everything delivered to them on a silver platter, and it's part of how they're being raised. But within that bubble, we can also start teaching our children to be more giving and to be kind and compassionate and to look at what's going on around them. And, as much as my son can be a typical 12-year-old living in Canada, the one thing that he's really good at, and I'm probably going to go broke doing it, is everybody he sees that needs some help, he's dipping into the change jar and jumping out of the car while we're stopped and filling up their guitar basket or, the guitar case or whatever the case may be, or running into the store and grabbing them a sandwich. And it's just such an amazing thing to see when he gets back into the car, how happy he is about doing that and how rewarding. And then, now that he's 12, he's going into high school, he's probably going to be doing the same with his friends in tow. And then it's just this perpetual momentum that he's contributing to. And that's how I really try to look at everything. It's as if we have a choice at every given moment to jump on this wheel that's spinning in the direction of negativity, or this wheel that's spinning in the direction of positivity. And if you look at every situation as an opportunity to take one direction or the other, you tend to think more about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And for me anyways, I want to contribute to the right direction. I want to always be making that choice that sends me on the right wheel, adding to that momentum. But knowing that if I fail in any situation, that I'm only human, mm-hmm. and that I'm here to learn, and that next time I'll just try that much harder and know what triggers me to want to be more reactive than responsive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool. So I'm wondering if you have anything you feel that's been left unsaid, or
if you're looking for change within yourself and within your life, to listen to what you're drawn to. If if you feel so inclined to buy a Soulful Awakening, buy it. If you feel so inclined to go and see a speaker in your hometown, go and see them. If you need to go for a hike in the woods and hug a tree, just go and do it. And allow yourself the time to do those things, and to give yourself the time on a daily basis to reconnect with your soul. And, whether that's 5 minutes, for me, it's 7 minutes every morning. And that's my time. I work 14, 16 hours a day, no joke, 6 days a week. So I don't have a lot of time. But what I found is that if I take a few minutes every morning and give my gratitude to the universe, to the world, to the plants, to the trees, to my fellow human beings, and then set a daily intention and let go of any expectations about how my day is actually really going to go, my life unfolds so much easier and more fluidly than it would if I didn't take that time. So it's really important for everyone to take the time to nourish your soul and your spirit, and to follow your intuition, and to do the things that you love, and to come from love and compassion in every moment, and see how your life begins to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for those listeners that are wanting to develop their psychic abilities, are there any practical tips that you have for them that they can start using today?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that we all have these abilities. I'm just as special as anybody else out there. We're all the same. We're all equal on every level. And although it may seem like there's things that differentiate us in our circumstances, we're the same. We're equal. And if the person next to you is able to channel, so can you. It's just a matter of knowing that you can, and really knowing. There's a message, and I'll probably post it on my blog at some point, about the difference between thinking you know something and actually knowing that you know something. Sure. And so if you want to start having a relationship with your own guides and teachers, know that they're there. Know that you can connect with them. Clean your body out. Prior to my accident, I also had the joy of dealing with Lyme's disease for quite a few months. So I had to do quite a big cleanse, and I think that contributed to my overall ability to channel, because my body was now clean. This is our vessel. This is what we have to work with. And if it's dirty, like a rusty pipe, you're going to have the same thing going on as the water. If you have a dirty pipe, the water's not going to flow. We have a connecting link to the upper world, and we need to keep that clean. So start thinking about what you put into your body, why you're putting it into your body, and how you can make changes around your diet to be able to become more conducive to being able to channel and reach our guides. So know that you can do it, clean your body, find a quiet place to do it, and know that there's multiple ways of connecting. It can be through writing, it can be through singing, it can be through art, it can be through sport. You'll know when you've reached a connection with the other side. And sometimes it's just a matter of maybe getting a message from somebody. I had a close friend of mine when this was all happening, and she asked for a message from her father. and I didn't know if he would come through. Like I said, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I did. I got a message from him, and consequently, a year later, now she's able to connect with him herself. And she just did a radio show with me the other day talking about that experience. So sometimes it's just a matter of using somebody else as the conduit the first time, and then you're able to do it yourself.
Ooh, I love that. That's awesome. And I think that that's such an important point about keeping our physical bodies clean, and allowing ourselves to be kind of like a clear channel so we can receive that information. Because I think, we just kind of eat foods and kind of contaminate our bodies with stuff that we can't even pronounce, or we're not even aware of what we're putting into our bodies, whether that's with food or alcohol or the air we breathe. I mean, just all the stuff that we're bombarded with. So I think that that's a really good point to be conscious of that. So awesome.
Well, and all food has its own vibration.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. We're all energy, and when we're talking about connecting to our higher self and to other beings and to source and that kind of thing, we're talking about vibration. So if you start looking at everything in life from that perspective, you'll start noticing which foods create a low vibration within your body and which foods create a higher vibration. Yeah. And for a lot of us, we just go through our days thinking, oh, I'm feeling kind of sluggish. It's 3:00. I need my afternoon nap, or maybe I didn't get a good night's sleep last night, or whatever the case may be. But oftentimes it's the food that we're consuming and the water we're consuming. And when you start really paying attention to how your body reacts to certain things, then you can start making the changes to keep yourself on a higher vibration.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Oh my gosh. We just chatted about so much today. Covered all sorts of the wide range of topics. So tell us about the gift that you have for Spark Academy members. I understand you have a chapter of your book.
So that chapter, Times Are Changing, came through many channeled messages prior to me really having any idea what was going on around the world. Like when I started channeling, I had never heard of Wayne Dyer or Deepak Chopra, or I was pretty green to everything. So I'm just a testament to another human that is evolving in synchronicity with everyone else out there.
Well, I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
So how do the listeners get in touch with you and find out more about you?
Well, I have a website, stephaniebanks.org. I also offer messages, readings through my website. I have a blog that I try to keep up to date on a weekly basis. I have a Facebook page, which I love to connect with people through Facebook. And my book is available through my website for signed copies, or on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Balboa Press.
Excellent. Yes, and so I'll put all the links on your show page so y'all can connect with Stephanie with a click or two. So awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. This was such an insightful conversation, so thank you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure, and thank you to all your listeners out there. And, just go out in the world and have fun. Life is meant to be fun. It's not meant to be a struggle. And if things do appear to be a struggle, then it's time to reevaluate about how you're looking at things.
Cheers to that. Yes, awesome. And now I'd love to hear from you. The most awesome discussions happen after the show over at theawakenedgoddess.com. So get yourself over there and leave a comment right now. Did you enjoy this episode? If so, subscribe to the show. And of course, it would be absolutely amazing if you shared this with all of your friends. And if you want even more incredible resources, join Spark Spiritual Academy to get this month's Psychic Development collection of bonus content. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Awakened Goddess. I hope you enjoyed today's show and took away something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at thegoddessnextdoor.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.